Welcome to the 100X Life Podcast, where we activate people who desire to live the words of Jesus and experience the abundant life he promises. I'm your host, Rob Dayton, and I hope this podcast inspires you to put in the work of following Jesus.
Now the Spirit of the Lord is upon me to bind up the brokenhearted and set the captives free.
Welcome back, 100X Lifers. Wow, we are on day 25. We're ticking them off. This is Word of Jesus number 19, be reconciled to your brother. This one comes on the heels of do not be angry with your brother. This is Jesus continuing the commentary on avoiding anger and saying that now, okay, so the answer is we're going to be reconciled with our brother, so we don't have to be angry. And I got my good friend, Pete Miko from San Antonio. Are you in San Antonio or Santa Barbara today?
Today I'm in Santa Barbara.
He's in Santa Barbara.
That's why I'm smiling.
That's why he's smiling. Yeah. He moved to San Antonio. What was it? 3 years ago now? 4?
COVID. Yeah. 4 years.
Okay. Yeah. And tell us about yourself. What do we need to know?
Well, so I got 3 kids. I got a 33-year-old stepson, and I've got a 19-year-old sophomore in college named Brooklyn, and Gia, my 6'1" pain in the rear freshman in high school, and my wife Celia.
Okay.
So yeah, we did move to San Antonio. We live in a small community north of San Antonio named Bernie. Total God thing as well, not necessarily related to anything in particular. I'd give it to 100X Life, but it might have been Master's fault. I don't know. Might have been my project.
It's one of them.
Yeah, and just got a heavy calling that I had to go to Texas. My wife is from there. Get the kids in school, get life back to normal and stabilized. And I've never felt so strongly about something. I still don't know what I'm supposed to do completely, but
you're being obedient.
I'm being obedient. So
that's really crazy. And when you say the Masters, Pete was a part of the Masters program. Has actually done it a couple times in Santa Barbara. Okay, he would say maybe
1.2.
Yeah, and I mean, it is kind of challenging when you're juggling households. And I do remember that pretty clearly. I think Celia had been talking about moving back to Texas for a long time.
Yeah,
and then you felt there was alignment spiritually to pull the trigger and do it.
Yep. Yeah. So and she would tell everybody, she tells everybody she didn't want to do it. So that's pretty funny.
There you go. Well,
on the road to Damascus, when we were moving, we got a flat tire. And I remember we had in the trailer and the dog pooped in the car, and it was just a disaster. And it's scary on the 10 in New Mexico. And she's crying. The kids are all over the map. And she goes, why can't we move like normal people?
How do normal people move?
Well, first, you see, she didn't agree to move. I was moving.
Yes.
So I think that was her interpretation of it, was that normal people hired movers and everything. And I was just like loading up a trailer and we're going.
And then you said, be careful what you ask for.
Yes.
No, you didn't say that.
Oh.
No, that would be incitement and make it even worse, which, it has a lot to do with what we're talking about today. So you're a business guy. You've had so many businesses. I feel like I can't count.
Well,
how many businesses
I don't even know.
Like an entrepreneur?
I don't even know. But serial entrepreneur. When we went out there, we had a series of businesses that actually worked better for being centrally located in the country, and then all that's changed. Partially COVID, partially bad management, partially bad partnerships. So we're in a very interesting, tough, challenging times now, and so. As I told Rob, I'm coming in as like the before picture of a weight loss commercial, and some of you guys are going to be the after, but I'm the before. So what you're getting is about as raw and real, and in the middle of it as you'll get. So I'm just going on faith on this. So thank you, Rob.
Let's go. And what's really cool about watching you, when business isn't going well, it's kind of breathless, and it's hard to see, where the next dollar is going to come from. It sounds to me like some of your posts on Telegram and some of our conversations that this is really driving your relationship and dependency on God.
Yeah, I mean, I've done this challenge before and I'm good. Give me a list, I'll do it and I'll follow it. And the one thing it revealed this time was that this time it's like on the spiritual side, it's insane. I feel like I'm in spiritual ketosis and I'm, just on fire. Meanwhile, I am on fire, but I'm on fire for Jesus. And I like, okay, I'm not sure what the next step is, but I do know that I feel everything and the distraction. I'm really cognizant of like one of your previous speakers talked about, being deliberate and almost apologize for being just constantly talking about that. But yeah, it's taken away all the distractions, taking away all the dependencies, so to speak. Was never too heavy on alcohol, but certainly it would, the amount of times I say no, it's like kind of funny. Now I go, whoa, that was there. Sugar, huge deal. And then now finding I'm trying to add things to the list. Now I'm realizing it's podcasts. Holy smokes. I could tune out with a podcast. The podcast version of TMP has been awesome because that's right up my alley. But the reality was I'm realizing there are a lot of other things that are becoming distractions that are separating me from God. And then ultimately being clear-headed, clear-minded, and focused on solutions, and then being mindful of everything else around me, like my family is where, is I'm insulating some of it from them. But as you go through, and I'm the primary breadwinner, and I try to make things happen and so forth. I'm trying to make sure I don't cross over and my moods or my frustrations aren't crossing over at all.
Wow. Yeah. So it's a challenging season, heightened awareness of God in your life. So let's go. You're in it. Okay. Yep. So, and how would you say, is that kind of what you're saying is that 100X life is illuminating? Cause you're in the challenge. I saw you on the channel yesterday, 500 push-ups. That was pretty wild. I couldn't tell if that was a Pete joke or if that was
Pete
for
joke.
Real.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, last year, the trees that I was chainsawing, that was real. So I get to go home to that because there's a freeze going on right now. But yeah, it's bringing things into focus. It's bringing in the importance of my walk. It's bringing in the importance of, like, in some cases, how you get places. You forgot to check in with God along the way. I will tell you my example of Texas. God was 110% in it. There's no questions asked. And I could probably come up with a handful of other areas. And then I could come up with a million places where he wasn't really in the middle of it. And for whatever reason, not, sometimes it's not a reflex. Now there's a lot of on my knees physically saying, hey, how do I do this and keep it together for our employees? How do I keep it together for my family? Where do you want me? So the diversion of moving to Texas, I've been praying a lot, like to use our property and to use me in a bigger way for the kingdom. And does that mean continuing to come back and forth between California and Texas? Does it? I don't know, so I'm really praying for focus there, but I'm like, am I being, none of this would be as highlighted and as energized if it wasn't for doing this challenge, kind of exposing and leaning on the reading and the journaling and the time alone and all the things that without discipline, which I don't have a ton of in that area, it's been good for me. So now, the sugar and the alcohol has been crazily easily this time.
How many times have you done the challenge?
This is my second time.
Okay. So second time around. And do you feel like the community on the Telegram channel helps? How much of that is motivation for you?
Well, I mean, that's added challenge to me because I internally, instinctively just hate that stuff. That is small groups. A lot of people
don't like that.
But yeah, Rob, just come on over to a small group and just, I will come up with an excuse not to show up. Once I'm there, I'm fine, but it's just, I'm an introvert. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
But
who wants to hear from me anyway?
Well, and in this environment right now, I don't feel like I'm an authority. I don't think,
hey,
ironically, I feel like an authority and like, okay, I'm in a quagmire. I think I shared with you before that, sometimes in the master's program, my first round, it's intimidating. You got some people that are pretty successful, and it felt like everybody's kind of making little adjustments. And I'm like, I'm drowning right now. So it's like, it's not an adjustment. There's some big things to move
overall.
And so the daily interaction, the daily reminder, the daily integration, I think I share with you also, is that I really like that. The master's was kind of this, college prep quarterly meeting and get together, super full of just stuff. And then this is like a daily devotional fellowship. This is life, right? Good, bad. Some people are sharing. We've got, friends with cancer. We got family with cancer. We got this and that, financial, everything. This is the real deal. So I've liked this part that you've added to the masters. It feels like you've enhanced the masters to be more than just a quarterly, like cram the night before a college exam.
Right. Yeah, this is more on the daily for sure. And some people don't have the appetite for it, but absolutely. This is the rewiring your mind part of the master's program that we talk about in session 2. And then we're off to the races on other stuff. So, and I think arguably, if you don't get this as a foundation, I think everything else, call to be faithful, call to fruitfulness is going to be challenging if we don't first transform. It's like that thought about putting the oxygen mask on yourself before you start helping your family, before you start helping the world, the Christian. Like, where's your transformation that proves that you even have the right to be faithful or be fruitful? So, yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, let's get into this, because this one's pretty amazing in terms of the weightiness, and it's so Jesus. It's so Jesus, where he's comparing this, he's saying it's more important to actually be reconciled with your brother than to worship. Which, how many of us are on a Sunday worshiping and then at the same time have not been reconciled to our brother? So let's read it. This is Matthew 5:23 through 24, and also off the heels of "Do not be angry. That is the first you have heard it said." So he's continuing on this lane, and if you can picture what we talked about yesterday, and that don't be angry with your brother, he's saying therefore, here's a why, or this is something to do. He says, therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar. In other words, you'd be worshiping like we would be worshiping, or maybe we're giving a tithe. And there, while you're worshiping or at the altar, remember that your brother or sister has something against you. It's not even that you have something against them. They have something against you. Leave your gift there in front of the altar and go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift. What is your impression of Jesus, kind of that raw scripture for you? What hits you the most?
It's just salvation, right? I mean, if the hypocrisy of not forgiving others or not engaging in and diving into why you could have wronged somebody purposely or accidentally, and you're not willing to submit to the altar, so to speak, then that's the foundation of our faith. So you're turning your back on that. This one, as I told you, this is for whatever reason, probably because I'm sensitive to people being disappointed in me. My mother would say that's the worst thing on the planet.
For you.
So by nature, I kind of do it so unfairly. I'd love to be like super noble in this. Oh yeah, I hit him with this and I did. No, I'm just horribly don't want to disappoint you. Yeah,
well, and there's
partly why I'm on this podcast. I don't want to disappoint, it's like, use the tools you got, but that's my number one thing. But, and I had to do some deep soul searching because I've had to do inventory over the years, and, those that have wronged me feels, or I've wronged them. I have more that wrong me, I feel like, but I've been blessed in that I had 2 kind of quick stories of how that can turn into something crazy. You had an example in the book about the working late, and I love that one. It's simple, but it's like, hey, that Christian guy over there, So I had a really good friend that I loaned like $20,000 years ago, and somehow the term loan and give got confused, and
that's
I
unfortunate.
And I also made the mistake. I didn't tell my wife. So then I was going to have to tell her we lost the money, or what have you. So I prayed about it. And this isn't, I'd love to say I do this every time. The reason the story's so great is because it wasn't me. It wasn't my idea. So I prayed about it. So I called him the next day. I said, here's the deal. It was a loan, but let's do this. What can you afford to pay a month? He's like $150. I said, okay, here's my daughter's college account. If you miss a payment, you're denying my daughter a college education because I'm not putting anything in it. So that's the way I deal with everything. So I think he's still putting money in, and there's more than enough money for her college, and I haven't had to touch it. You talk about like
Wow.
how many times.
Because
So
that
then
started a long time ago.
that started, 17 years ago. And so to go through what we're going through now and to know that like the college was just due, she's got her budget. And so she went up and we met with him a couple months ago and thanked him for doing that. And you talk about a double cool thing that could have been crappy and ruined a relationship. And just by allowing God to kind of give me the right angle on that, it was awesome. And it's never come up. And I'm laughing because I'm going, I think he's paid it back. I mean, he's definitely getting
More
like,
so.
well, it's tenfold. I mean, it's over six figures, so just crazy. Another time.
That before you move on,
Yeah.
like that's what's very fascinating about this story is it really hits the mark in we don't want to lose relationship with people.
Right.
That's the problem. And I've got a reference to 1 John 4:20, which I think is a very important point that John is making, the Apostle John, that you can't claim to love God unless you love people. And that means you're going to be concerned about keeping relationship almost at all costs. And so what you did in that particular situation is you found a way to keep relationship and then make it okay for the both of you. And then what's really cool is how much God blessed you because of that. You could have easily just said, no, dude, you owe me the money. Here's the amount. And your daughter wouldn't have had that kind of budget for school.
No friendship, no college, it would have been interesting.
No friendship, no college. But in the friendship is the thing is so important. I think in my own life, I've become extremely hyper vigilant to have no one upset at me. And I love that you have that natural talent. I think I do too. I think it comes from like a kind of a people pleasing, behaviors from the past. But I also have imaginations about, hey, if someone has a problem with you, and particularly if they got Jesus and Holy Spirit on board, that's a power against you. Like they're misusing the power of God, but it's coming against you. And that's going to be a problem for your life. I guess forgive me for being so selfish about it, but I don't want anyone to have a problem with me because I don't want it to impact my life negatively.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. But I also know that we come equipped with certain things and antennas that maybe some people don't. I know some people that are super amazing people, but they don't hear the obvious things and are tone deaf in certain areas. And I know I miss things, especially in the house with the wife. And so I think that happens to the average person. And I think the worst challenge for Christians especially is that they separate like money and faith or work and faith. And those are the really tough ones. And I had a business interaction with a guy in town. He was the customer and he's a big time CPA and he went really berserk on our company. And so I kind of did what you did I was really tormented because he's a Christian guy, goes to my friend's church. And I'm like, man, I drove that guy to that, which I didn't. There was other things going on, but I prayed about it. And I did the same thing you did. I just said, you know what? You owe me like $36,000. You pick the number. He's like, what? And I said, you pick the number. Like, I can't, function not making money. But at the end of the day, this affected you horribly. And so if this affected you that horribly, then put a number on it and I'll honor it. So he thought about it and came back and it was like 29. Completely reasonable.
And you probably were a little bit like, what?
I was puckering. I was scared. I was like, what have I done? But
okay. So you had
I'd love to say it was a cocky, confident. It was not. So I think sometimes, and that played into my personality of not wanting to disappoint. But I also know I prayed about that. And I also was trusting his faith. It's like, okay, let's see if you're genuine because you've had a bad day. Are we going to, eat each other? Or are we going to, take care of each other and honor each other, and he was very fair. So that was a great situation, but not, these things aren't always. So when I say I'm reflexive in my wanting to please, I'm not reflexive in giving it to God and saying, okay, this is a God, let's get you in the middle of this. So that's what stands out, like in those two cases, because I really prayed about it. And I got crazy results.
Wow. That's really, really powerful. And I think it's what's really cool. Now, are you still in a relationship with that guy, or do you feel like,
no,
so it was just kind of one off?
Yeah. And
he's not angry at you.
Not that I know of. I didn't have maybe the maturity to keep coming back. I have another guy that wronged me in a business deal, and mainly it was because he was young and dumb, and I was naive. And so I was really bent. I spent a lot of money and time setting everything up. And then he basically said, we don't need you. And then a year later, we did a talk. We both talked at the same seminar, and I just was called to come alongside of him. And that's 22 years ago. He's one of my best friends. And whenever stuff's really rough, he calls me, and vice versa. And it's like, he will joke and say, I think you probably should have smacked me. The 22-year-old version of me, you probably should have smacked. And, and that was not as cognizant, but that was like something that just like, hey, if you have a problem, just go into it, see what happens. But I've had other failures. I've tried an ex-employee that thinks I wronged her, and I have backflipped. I have donated time to like her friend that's sick, and I've done all these things, and I can't figure out what it is.
And at a certain point, and it's interesting because at the end of the day, it's probably not you.
So that's how I resolve. Like, that's why I just stopped. And if I see her and her husband, I'll just, say hi to him. I see him at the grocery store, said hi to him and asked how everything's going. But I just had to kind of say, this is not my deal anymore. I can try,
Yeah, I think there's something to that. But before we get to that aspect of like kind of the end of the road, I think what's really practical that you're saying that our listeners can think about, how do we do this, is that it's kind of like companies today who are selling things to us. The good ones kind of cut to the chase. How do we make this right? That's the focus. If the focus isn't on the, is your anger against me righteous? Is it real? That's not the focus. The focus is, what would make this right? And I think it's important to realize is that Jesus is saying, hey, don't be angry. But then he's switching to, if someone's angry at you, here's the position to take. I'm going to resolve this at all costs. Your stories clearly show that. And then also you got blessed by those. Do you think that's it? Do you think how do we make this right?
Well, I think I just, when you said that, I was thinking, we just need to react like Costco. We just take it back, but don't underestimate that interaction. Don't underestimate the brevity of it. It can be a small thing by not melting down.
Yes.
In a meltdown scenario. I'm constantly in customer service things now where I'm sitting there watching everybody melt down around me, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to stay level-headed, and we're going to come at this and see if I can be a light. So like, at least that guy's different. And then I had a meltdown at a basketball game, and my kids just shook their head, and I just told them, I said, well, that was an easy meltdown. Like, I didn't cuss. I didn't personally attack the guy, but I made a case, And so I think we have to, really take advantage of those unique opportunities. It's hard in the moment, whether it's the neighbor, whether I just really always kind of go about the approach that I'm not sure everybody quite understands what they're doing to you.
Yes. Right. Is that the same as like what Jesus says, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do.
Yeah. And I just try to take that approach, and some of it's because I'm in a service business, and I, like with these fires, it's classic. I know the MO. We go down, we quote unquote save the day, and then when the bill is due, we're the problem. We're, this and that, because all the other stuffs are piling up, and all the other problems are not associated to us. And it's an emotional drain, but you kind of got to understand, and it's an opportunity. And I've witnessed in those environments, and I've been not witnessing in those environments, but I really think that God, if he wants us to be little Christ, that's the opportunity, and to stand out differently in a world and a culture that's selfish and, narcissist and all these things. let's just be different.
That's how we stand out. And it's not lost on me that some of the words we're using are previous words of Jesus that we've studied that built to this point. You know, it's going to be really hard to reconcile to your brother if you're full of unforgiveness, judgmentalness, and condemnation. There's steps to this. And so you almost have to get free first and really understand what is the heavenly dimension of this battle that we talked about that with Andrew and Annette, is that our struggle is not against flesh or blood. And another reality is God does own everything. Like, you're just a steward of what he owns anyway. Is he limited in what he can give you? No. If someone rips off from you, they're ripping off from God. Is he going to let them off the hook? Of course. And then he may bless you in the process of you doing that and seeking reconciliation over, let's say, righteousness. Like, I think that's the fight, right? So people are angry at each other and they're arguing about who is right, who has the truth here, versus how do we keep a relationship. Okay, this is really cool. And you brought up little Christ, which is the term for Christian. Christian actually means little Christ. And Paul says you're the body of Christ. It's kind of interesting because he says we're the body of Christ, and Jesus was actually walking around when he was on planet Earth, but now he's still walking around. It's you and me.
Mm-hmm.
We are the body of Christ, and we are actually his reputation. One of the things that I'm very tenacious about in this, the reason for 100X Life, is we are his reputation. We are the body of Christ. You know, what people think of Christians is on us. And if we live the words of Jesus and we're constantly seeking reconciliation with those who are upset at us, how much more does that smell like Jesus?
Yep. Well, and it's our time to shine. It's the walk and the walk. It's all the things that we get hit with that we don't do. I have many people say, "Oh, I hate working for Christians,
Right.
or hiring Christians."
Right. What is
and
that?
That is something. So there's somebody out there. I'm hoping it's like the same person that just keeps screwing everything up in Jesus' name. But yeah, what an interesting amount of pressure. There was a thing at Providence School. I think it was Providence School years and years ago, before I even had kids, and it was Tim Brown, the wide receiver for the Raiders, and he was giving his testimony at this silent auction, and Kathy Ireland, I think, got him up there and everything. And I remember he gave the typical athlete, pro athlete, giving his testimony and doing the right thing and so on and so forth, and sat down. And then they gave this award for the top athlete in the school, and this kid won the Tim Brown, Achievement Award. And you look at Tim, he's looking around, and I'm like, uh-oh, somebody didn't tell him. So what is the pro athlete, the celebrity? I'm thinking it's going to go, right? He's going to say he got nervous and he got up and he said, "Excuse me, I got to say something." And I'm like, here's the disclaimer. I'll be darned, that guy didn't say, "Hey, I didn't know this award was going to be named after me." And I just want to tell you, it's not an easy thing to do, to name something after somebody in today's age and know that I will never let you down. Mm-hmm. I will sin, I will make mistakes, but I will never make that trophy to where you're embarrassed to bring it out. That's my commitment today. Yeah, I almost cried. That was unbelievable.
Wow.
Right?
That's
a bet.
He stood up and said that.
He stood up and said that. Yeah.
And so what do you take from that? Is that, what was he communicating? Say it in different words.
I felt what he was communicating is that, kind of like we're making this declaration to Christ through doing this small sacrifice, but he's doing it in front of everybody, saying, "Look, I'm willing to dedicate my life to the principles of Christ, follow the best I can, but I am never going to give up on God, for sure. And I'm going to try not to give up on, pleasing him. And by that pleasing him, I will be an example of him." And I just saw that as something like, I'm up for the challenge, which is a huge declaration in front of 400 strangers that are looking for something, that I was looking for ways out. I was like, holy smokes. And I think it's the same thing I say to my family through all the thick and the thin, is like, I am the perfect guy. I'm the perfect person, and probably the only person on this planet that can get us in the right spot. Us, this group. Not the most talented, but I'm uniquely designed for this mission. And so that's kind of where I got that language from, because I'm like, frick, if Tim Brown can say that in front of a bunch of strangers, I can say that in front of my family, you know. But I believe it to my core, you know. I'm the only one that knows how to crack the code on the freshman, you know. And I'm the only one that can crack the code on and knows every hair on my wife. I know every single thing that's going through her mind and her past and her life and her challenges. I know everything as much as I can. So I'm in knowledge, and I want that challenge, and we should all want that challenge. So I might have veered off, but that's what I took from that, is just that ultimate willing to put it out there like that. And I'm sitting here worried about looking strange or being embarrassed in a small group, or because I'm an introvert. So, you know, I've learned how to turn that around through technique and know that God doesn't want me in the corner acting, you know, quiet and what have you. But I see that as another opportunity to, you know, show your faith. And then when your kids start repeating stuff like, of course, Dad did that, you know, with something like talking to somebody, you know, checking on somebody, whatever, checking on a stranger, that's really cool. I'm trying to, right?
Because they're starting to get the hang of who Pete is.
Yes.
And what's really cool about what you're saying is you're taking this reconciliation as, you know, there's a lot of things, and, you know, I know your whole story, so I'm a little bit more advantaged than everyone else is listening, but there's some really real challenges you're talking about in that. And you're saying that I know them, and I'm looking at them, and they are worth, they're worth sacrificing for. They're worth me being more patient. They're worth me seeking reconciliation, even though I might be right about this.
Right.
Right. So that is service. Like, that is a servant position. That's being servant, in this case, in your family. But Jesus asks us to be the servant of all. You want to be first. You want to be first. Be the servant of all. So that servant position is really kind of living in reconciliation and refusing to let things get to the place where they're going to be a problem for you. I'm going to get ahead of it. It's probably your futuristic helping you out.
Right.
And giving you more clarity. You know, Pete's got, what is it in the numbering, your futuristic?
It was number 1 and responsibility 2.
Yeah. So that means you got a lot of clarity about the future. You've run the scenarios, you know the end result of not being reconciled is going to be worse than the pain of sacrifice. Isn't that amazing? Like, I'll say it again. You understand that reconciliation is a small price to pay versus being unreconciled. And I'll say that that's a good place to kind of end on this particular word, because that's what Jesus is talking about. He's like, you got to pursue reconciliation as the better way out, as the real truth in the matter, and kind of referencing back to Jesus equating being angry to murder. There's got to be some kind of harm that's caused when we're up against someone. And so be reconciled to your brother is taking the offensive move of you seeing somebody who has a problem with you and you making it right. That was pretty cool. Okay, Pete, I want to get your responses to 100X lifestyle. I think this is the whole conversation has been super practical for people who want to put this into play. But here's the 100X lifestyle, things that would be true. If this is true, then you're probably living this word. Let me get your gut reaction to it. Okay, you actively work to reconcile with people who have something against you.
Yes.
It was very obvious, right? It's like almost restating it. And what do you think actively reconcile looks like for you? Is it this hyper awareness that we gotta make sure we're good?
You brought up some hyper diligent. Is that what you said? Hyper diligent? And
something.
I listened to a podcaster and he mentioned that he was, and I was laughing why I liked him. And it was because we both have these bizarre we see the strange, obvious things in our eyes. And it's like, doesn't everybody else see this? You know?
Right.
I was just going to add one thing on this whole thing. You know, at first I went into family when we started talking about this, thinking, have I wronged my family? You know, and then I was kind of chuckling, going, it could be dicey because I mean it's minute by minute, right? Because in that story of the neighbor with the fence, replace a family member with the neighbor next door,
right.
Well, that 6 o'clock would be maybe sometimes 5 and then 4. And then depending on how I feel, 3, so I was kind of chuckling, going, so it's not that I'm going to leave. I'm going to make it a brother, not a family member. But yeah, I just think that, we sit on a lot of things. I've recently acquired this fun thing called worry, which I've never done before. So, and a little bit of stress, which actually the exercise is helping. But, I think about harboring those things and how nice it is to release each thing. And then I just love brothers. I love being in groups. You introduced me to, you didn't introduce me to, we did a Wild at Heart seminar with men's at Calvary Chapel. And we created that group. I mean, how long were we together? We were forever, right?
It was
7
a long
years?
time. Yeah.
A long time.
With 10 Ike and
I think we had to break up because we were tired of each other after a while, but I wasn't. I'm just saying somebody was. No,
somebody was.
But it was, I love that stuff. And I'm a team thing, and my kids play team sports because I want them to learn to relate and how to solve problems with other people, high functioning people, really not high functioning people, people that care, people that don't care. And so I just love that dynamic. And I've had to recreate that in Texas and to a bunch of men who were unsuspecting, which is kind of fun. It's like, wait a minute, I just thought I came over here to, play basketball. Nope. You're my third baseman in my spiritual life, and this is what you're doing here and that's what you're doing there. So, I don't have any track record in Texas, ironically. So I don't have anybody I've wronged yet, knock on wood, that I know of.
So you're thinking about like the difference between your family and being reconciled to your family and then the other guys in your life.
Yeah. So I just, when I was reading this, I thought at first family and thinking like, I need to, but that's a slippery slope because it's a moving target, though I do it daily and there's a level of checking in and right. And, checking on and then having to evaluate, is this the real deal or is this something else? Kind of like the one employee that never came back as far as, I can only take it so far. But yeah, I just know that I feel like my purpose is to connect and to connect people. And I don't know what God wants me to do with it. I don't have a scriptural, guide to why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just acting on faith and trying to feel. And I get some awesome answers sometimes. And other times I'm just sitting there, feel like I'm waiting, but I'll just keep going in a direction.
And that's sometimes all we can do, is just to keep on going. Okay. How about this one? You view loving people as the same as loving God.
My body doesn't think that, but,
right.
Because man, there's some gnarly people out there, but I can see it. I can see that God has to love me. He's seen me in some bad scenarios. He's seen me do wrong. He's forgiven me and he's coming back for more. And I know I know my intentions aren't bad. So that I'm like, so what is this other person dealing with? What is this? I think I shared one story where I'm pursuing this poor guy in Texas, and he knows he's being pursued. He's a former pastor. He knows he's being pursued, but it's not me. It's God's like, okay, go. And
you're getting direction and you're following.
Yeah. And at the very least, he's going to know he's got a safe place to hang out.
Yeah. You've got to be really real, be authentic if I'm going to be in your life, and you're going to demand that authenticity in that relationship. It's really interesting. It's a very helpful hack, in my opinion, that when you're seeing somebody, if you have a problem or they have a problem with you, if you see them as image bearers, and then you really get into this statement, you love people as the same as you're loving God, because he's comparing worship to reconciliation being more important, and worship is a form of loving God. So when we love other people, it's a form of worshiping God too, probably more important to him than any song we could sing or gift we could bring, according to Jesus. Okay, awesome. Any last thoughts for the group? Any words of wisdom for somebody who's on day 25?
Man, I am the last guy. All I know is, like I said, the sugar and everything, and then the traveling with the working out has been a little interesting.
Yeah.
Trying to do push-ups in the Las Vegas airport with that carpet gnarly. I'll do some squats or something.
Yeah,
So
totally.
now I'm not gonna judge people when I see them doing weird things in an airport. But I'm definitely seeing for whatever reason, this trip, I'm getting the building up the muscle, building up and the strength in all these areas so that you can fight what's coming or take on what's coming, that you can receive what's coming, and that these habits now I can see keeping as many as I can. I want to keep going, and I want to, figure out how to create more time. So in the master's program, you go through the whole thing about creating margin, and here I'm filling it with podcasts or Netflix when I'm on the road. I'm like, oh man, that's interesting. So like I could see adding stuff, but it's not adding it as a burden or like I'm being denied something. It's adding it so that I can have more time for my family or my wife and my fellowship and my relationship with Christ, and I can have a clearer focus and really focusing on turning this time of challenge and pain and frustration and unknown. And like I told you before, I can't wait to come on again. It's like, you won't believe it. I can't believe it. And it will be that I can believe it. We made it through. Turns out X happened.
Right.
And it won't be easy. And I've had situations in my work life where I've been devastated and wronged. And the wrong was worse than the financial devastation. And I can tell you honestly, I can't remember what happened in that 5-year period.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened, but everything turned around at that point. So I know everything's possible.
Yeah, if God could do it before, He's going to do it again.
Got to do it again.
That's so awesome. That's a great note to leave on. Pete, thank you so much. I really appreciate your honesty and sincerity and walking us through this one. And guys, you're on the challenge, day 25. Let's go. We're getting
Wolfpack.
Yeah, I think we're over a third now. So we gotta double down. We got to keep after it, and then good things are happening, and we'll see you tomorrow. If you believe in the 100X Life movement, please follow and invite a friend by sharing this podcast. The 100X Life movement can also be found on Instagram and Facebook, and also at 100xlife.com. The 100X Life podcast was produced by Jenna D of Jenna D Services with music by Ryan Ellis.
Lost, but you found me here, and your fire burns inside. It will not disappear, because the Spirit of